Hey guys, and welcome back to another Cultured Boys discussion. I'm Pepe, and I'm joined by Nathan and our other special guest, Priyal. And today we're going to be talking about something a little different that we've never actually talked about on the channel before. We're going to be talking about Indian movies, but one in particular, RRR, which came out in 2022. And we're going to have a run through. Priyal is what I like to say, an Indian movie expert. He's watched hundreds and hundreds of these things. So, welcome to the show, Priyal.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be on. Big fan of what you do. Really happy what you guys do. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, bro. It's always good to be joined by a fan. But a little bit of background before we get into this. Priyal's always said, "Oh yeah, I want to do something with you guys. We'll do something with you guys." And we're like, "Okay, we just need to find the right subjects." And funny enough, what I've always known you for, Priyal, is being this expert on Indian films. You've been in a few as well. You've been in a handful, right?
Yeah, I've done
Couple.
a few bits of like extra work and background work and stuff, and then so I've been a bit of
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. So what is funny about this episode, right, is that Priyal's quite an expert on these films. I've watched a handful because we used to work together at like a few premieres and stuff like that back in the day. But Nathan, on the other hand, has correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, you've never actually watched an Indian film before.
I watched one other one before this, but I am pretty much a complete noob at this. I'm
Yeah.
very little experience.
Which is so we got three different perspectives here, which is absolutely great for this. Which is why we wanted to do RRR as well, because I remember a couple years ago, like this was massive on Netflix. A few people were talking about this like crazy. As someone that was in that kind of industry, Pro, could you tell us a bit about the reception of it for us?
Yeah, I think it was huge. I think it was like an Indian. I wouldn't even say Bollywood because it's more catered towards sort of South Indian as well, and more trying to cater towards all the different regions of India. But I know they weren't just trying to impress sort of the Indian audiences, but trying to impress the Western audiences as well. And they were trying to go for all the big BAFTAs, Academy Awards. They were really just gunning for the film to do as well as possible and just to reach as many people as possible.
Fantastic. It's one of those things we'll get into a bit, but
Yeah.
before we go any further, Nathan, as always, Nathan gives a lovely breakdown of everything that we do. So, did you want to give a quick breakdown, Nath, of what RRR is?
Yes, I shall. And Pril, I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of these names or anything. Feel free to correct me.
Okay. No
I would
problem.
actually much prefer that so that we don't give off the wrong information. So RRR or Rudraram Ranam Rudhiram, directed by S.S. Rajamouli, produced by DVV Danavia, music by M.M. Kiravani, released 25th of March 2022 in the UK, and I guess on Netflix, pretty much is Netflix. And a runtime, Wiki says 182 minutes. Netflix says 3 hours and 5, so 185. I watched it on Netflix, so 185. Fight for honor, fight for revenge, fight for freedom. Two heroes face a common enemy, but find their causes don't always align. Thank you, Netflix. It's a nice, short, sweet breakdown.
Yeah, perfect.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it pretty much sums up as well, because when you watch this film, Jesus, there's a lot in it as well. There's there's a lot of interesting moments in this. But I want to go to Nathan first here, because I feel like whatever me and Priyal say is going to be like, oh, we've got experiences. Nathan, what is your first impression of this movie?
So, first impressions is there are a lot of elements in this that I know of, like an Indian film or Bollywood film. I know it's not Bollywood, but you know what I mean. Um, but I will say this film was pretty sick. The choreography was fucking cool. It felt kind of reminiscent of like like a Hong Kong martial arts film, like wire work and stuff. But it also had it felt like modern choreography as well, kind of like MMA stuff. So whoever stunt coordinator for that was fucking killing it. I'll say that. When you guys said when Pro said it was like catered to like a Western audience, that's kind of the influences I could feel. That kind of like more modern fight choreography. Lots of like grappling and takedowns, along with like there's boxing in it, and parts of it, and just like wire work and stuff. There were I did feel the influences, but then you've got like your traditional like song and dances that I'm like, oh okay, there it is, there they are. But again, like most Bollywood films or any like sort of songs I might have heard just hanging out with you guys in general, catchy as fuck, man, catchy as fuck. Like, what can I say?
I agree with you that there's some like fight coordination in this, which is completely just the thing is, it's really good fight coordination, but there's some completely over the top things as well, which is
Oh yeah,
again what
for
I kind
sure.
of expect from like Indian movies. Again, bro, I've watched a load of stuff with you, and like what I do love is the over the top thing. So it's cool. It's so cool when you see like this guy just stopping a motorcycle with his foot or whatever, and like or like this car which just
Oh
goes
god.
absolutely flying because some guy. What was it? Well, I think one of my favorite moments was like I think it was before the second half of the film or whatever, where like he's trying to escape or whatever. Then like he just pulls out the no, it was in the second half actually, where I think the one of the British guys, I think his name is Scott or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like his
Oh
car
yeah,
crashes,
the car. Yeah,
but
yeah.
not
And the
only
fucking
not only
rifle
does he
comes up and he grabs it midair and he's like, "I said faster!" And then he like shoots out Ram's tire or something, and then
yeah
his car fucking flips, and you're like, "What? These old cars
yeah
don't have enough petrol in them to fucking flip like that."
Yeah, and like, was it Ram goes flying, and was it Mali as well? She goes like flying out the cars, and the thing is, what I love about that is they both go absolutely.
Oh mate,
They
the
fly.
best part of them going flying is that like Mali lands and she's like, "Oh, I'm her little girl," and Ram just goes like flying into like a jagged branch,
Yeah,
and you're like, "What? Okay, sure,
It's a
sure."
very larger
It's
than life film and story, but
bruh,
exactly.
you know it's larger than life when like you first see Ram and he's they're like there's the protest, and then there's that like one guy. And they're like, "Go get him!" And he fucking jumps over the barbed wire fence with just a club and just goes into a crowd of like 400 people and just starts wailing on him. One guy versus like 400. You're like, my man is not taking any hit. Like he's getting hit and he's just like, "I don't care. I'm brick wall, mate. I don't care." And he's just like smashing people around. And it's not until like he's caught the guy that he's now like, "Oh, I'm getting tired and I'm taking hits and I'm falling." But before that, he's like, don't care, machine, beat you up."
I think that's like it's also like those first. I'm gonna say 20. It's even 40 minutes that intro because you get three different perspectives. You get like the
Mm,
start of it, like why everyone's kicking off. You get the introduction of Ram, and then you also get the introduction of is it Beam as well, the other
yeah,
character. I'm
Beam.
pronouncing that right. Yeah. So like you're getting the intro of Ram and Beam at the start, and you're showing how much these guys are powerhouses, and it's a great intro to because this guy's like freaking grabbing these two ropes, like trying to tame this tiger or whatever, and then like he's throwing this freaking thing in the tiger's face.
bruh.
It's also it's over the top, but it's absolutely great. It shows their strength right from the
I
start.
mean, you knew both these guys were powerhouses because they both have their own like scene where they got their shirt off and both dudes are shredded.
Ripped to the next
Yeah.
level.
Right. Right, Priyal, this is another thing as well, because obviously I've again seen quite a few of these. The whole shredded thing, is that actually the actor, or is that like have they done any CG to that? Would you know in these kind of
No,
films?
I'd
Like, do they
say
actually do
I would say
anything?
that's actually them. I would say,
Oh no,
with
like
a lot
that
of
look.
these sort of big films, they wouldn't want to cheat the audiences and they just make sure, especially this director, Rajamouli, he's known for making these really larger than life big films. Like I think he would just cast appropriately and make sure that everyone's on top form, basically.
God damn,
So
that means those guys were actually that
yeah,
just ripped.
Yeah.
Because again, like lighting and shit, but like fucking hell, you can just tell from fucking like sometimes you just see and it's like it's the shoulder and then the muscle in between like the
yeah,
actual like shoulder blade and you can just see the definition, and then fucking like their biceps are fucking huge. You're just like, these guys are absolutely fucking huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you need to, if they're like beating up like 500 people at a time
Yeah.
and stuff like that, just ripping through all these things. You have to show that power, I guess. So Priyal, have you watched this film before? I think you said that you've seen this.
No, I've not
right?
watched the film before.
Oh,
So
you haven't actually.
no,
Oh,
I
okay,
haven't.
okay.
So thank you for letting me watch it, because I'd known of the director's work before. He directed these two massive films called Bahubali 1 and Part 2, which I think is on Netflix, and we were recommended to watch the film. This was a few years ago, and we did watch it, but I personally wasn't a fan of Bahubali 1 and 2. Even though these huge blockbuster films, just they weren't for me. It wasn't like we watched it and turned it off halfway. We watched the whole film, both of them. Wasn't really, I liked the direction, but the film itself wasn't my sort of cup of tea. Which is why when RRR came out, again, the trailer didn't really look that appealing to me. It looked like that it was trying to appeal more to the West and actually, have more content and story. But I was pleasantly surprised. I would say pleasantly surprised. I think the film had a lot, a real good storyline, as well as over the top action, which you would kind of expect, but much better than I thought Bahubali 1 and 2. I thought the storyline was actually fantastic for this film.
Oh, nice.
So, obviously we've said like it's more catered to the West. Like, so compare this to something. I'm just gonna pull it out of air because I know it's one of your favorite films, Race 2.
Yes.
I think like we've like in a friendship group we know that Priyal's favorite film, and I remember he'd go on about it over and over, is Race 2 because it was so nuts and like it is just. Like, who's in Race 2?
Saif Ali Khan.
Who's the main
Saif Ali
actor?
Khan is the main guy.
Yeah. So I remember like this is one of your favorite films, and obviously Race 2 massive. Compare this RRR to Race 2. What are the differences in terms of appealing to the West? Like, what are the things that you pick out immediately from RRR, which is like that's a Western influence there, or like that's what they're trying to do to appeal to it?
I think in terms of scale and budget, like you can tell that this director just hasn't held back on anything. Where watch Race 1, Race 2, good films, but actually, I think the writing of those films probably wasn't, on point. It was probably quite good, but it wasn't like with this film. It was actually for me. I didn't think there was a dull moment in this film where there was just always something to keep you engaged. I felt just if you look at the canvas as a whole, I think everything was just every frame of the film was actually like, wow, that's just shot on the next level and scale. So answer to your question, I think it's just he's had more budget, and you can tell he's a really good filmmaker. I'd say like the director Rajamouli is not someone to be messed with. I'd say.
Dang.
Interesting. Yeah. So like obviously we have a lot of like CG and stuff in this as well. Like I remember when the film comes on, it gives you a list of things, it gives like a main credits, like special thanks, blah blah blah. And one of the things that stuck out to me was like no animals are harmed in this, it's all CG. And like it gives a list of the animals. So it's like horses, tigers, any oxen, any horses, any this, and it gives a whole breakdown of that. And like, do you think like with the CG that's gone into this, do you think is that like, do they have this kind of CG of like all these animals? Like, I mean, I think it's pretty good, like the tiger stuff, like everything like that.
I thought that looked pretty good.
It looked realistic, right? It was actually
it did, yeah.
Good. I'd say they may have CG in other Indian films, but no way near as much budget to use for the CG. Because if you look at even a lot of the Western CGI companies, they're all based in India. So they have the content, they have the artists and the designers to do it, but most of them are going to the West because that's where the money is. So yeah, that's my answer to the CGI question, I'd say. So
yeah, is that like I know this is like an industry thing now, like you said a lot of them have moved to the West. Has that affected the Indian film industry that much, like in comparison? Like if they're all moving to the West, do you think that's actually an effect on it?
I may do a little bit, but again it's to do with budget. Like I know a few of the big actors now, they've started up their own CGI companies, such as Shah Rukh Khan. He's got his own CGI company, so a lot of the Bollywood titles is just under Shah Rukh Khan's CGI company, basically, just because he wants to bring in new talent and keep it all in house, basically. So
fair.
Right. Again, I think I'm going to go back to the special thanks bit here as well. They thanked Salman Khan in the special thanks as well, right? Am I making that
Yes.
up, or did I see that? They
Yeah.
did. So, like, um, what was his influence? Because Nathan, I don't know if you ever heard of Salman Khan before.
I've heard some of these names in passing. Again, like, you know, being a group of friends, you just hear stuff without context. And so like I've definitely heard this name before, just in reference to Bollywood films, and I don't know who they are, but I've definitely heard the name before.
Like, like he's kind of revered, Prue. Is that to say, like, in the whole Indian film industry in general, Salman Khan is like quite a big name, right?
Yeah,
He's
so I think he was credited in this film because when they did the trailer launch for RRR to launch the film, Salman Khan
Mhm.
was like the chief guest and he was kind of there.
Oh,
So I'm guessing he may not have charged for that event and was just sort of on stage promoting the film. So maybe that's why they
Yeah.
gave him a thanks for that. But yeah, he's a big actor for anyone that wants to know. He's
Yeah,
one of my favorite actors. I'm sure James has heard me talk
because
about it enough.
I recognized as well. Who is the guy that played? They referred to him as Bubba. Who was
That
who
was
is that?
Ajay
Like,
Devgan. We've seen him. You've seen him before in real
yeah,
life as well. That was Ajay Devgan
I
as
did.
well.
That's the guy I remember. I saw him. I was like, this guy. I've seen this guy before. Where have I seen him? What film was he in that like?
We
Sorry. It's like, yeah. He
no,
just
that's
goes
all
back
right.
to
so we
mine and
saw him
Prill's.
in person when we went to the Satyagraha press conference, but we've also I'm sure
Yes,
we've
yeah.
seen him in a film as well. Bol Bachchan, I think. Do you remember we watched that in cinemas? Did you come
Was
to
he?
that?
That's
He
it.
was
Yeah.
in Bol
Okay.
Bachchan.
Yes, I did
So
see Bob Butcher. Yeah. I remember that. Jeez, that was like way back in.
very
What was
long
it?
time.
2014, 2015. I feel that was.
It was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
2012, James.
Jeez.
2012.
No way was Bowl Batch in
Jeez.
That was
2012.
2012.
That's ages ago. Jeez. Okay, that shows how far back me and Brew have been doing this kind of stuff.
Bro, that's a lifetime
Right.
ago.
So Brew, with this, like, do you think it defied expectations for you? Do you reckon?
Absolutely,
This?
absolutely. I actually went
Yeah.
into this with pretty low expectations, but I would say I was pleasantly surprised at how much of sort of like the emotional story was there as well. With the whole sort of the girl getting kidnapped, the relationship, with that as well. And I think it actually had a really interesting, engaging story, as well as visuals, which you'd expect, but actually having a really good story behind it actually took it to the next level, I would say, for me.
And Nathan, I'm curious as well. Like with this, like, do you think you'd go into like another Indian film? Like, this is one thing as well, because I always find, for me, Indian films are like, someone recommends this to me. So this got recommended to me way back in 2022 when it first launched. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is massive! This is massive," and I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'll get round to it or whatever." Obviously, Prue, you were just like, "Nah, I'm not interested because the director's previous work hasn't like." And well, you didn't enjoy it as much, and there's a lot of other Western influences, like you said. For me, I get this recommended not just by like funny enough, it's what you said. Like, I got recommended this to me by people in work who didn't really have like much experience in Indian films. So it was promoted on Netflix and pushed to people because it was obviously, like you said, catered to Western audiences. But my question to you, Nathan, is, having seen this film, would you go out personally and seek other Indian films, do you reckon, if they were recommended to you like loads? You're not much of a film person though, Nathan. This is what I also kind of gather. You don't watch as many films as, let's say, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more new media consumption in general. Like, I've said it so many times. Like, if it isn't for this, typically I'm not gonna watch it, just because if it ain't, on YouTube, or I'm not watching it, I don't know, it's not talked about in a stream or something by whoever I'm watching, chances are I've not heard of it. I've not heard of this until it was brought up.
Really?
I'm
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not on Netflix that often, even though I have access to it. Like, but I mean, if I was inclined to watch more films in general, yeah, I probably would seek out some more Indian films. I just find it funny that my entire history with Indian films, like the two I've actually seen, are both like heavily westernized from what I can understand. Because like the only other film I watched before this one was like Bride and Prejudice way, way back when I was like a
Oh
kid.
my god.
I watched that
Wow.
like in the cinemas and I was like, that's like my first like Indian film that I ever watched. Didn't even realize it. Like it just me and my family went and watched that way, way back when. But like that's it. I've the two films I've seen are both like Western as fuck.
Yeah, interesting.
Go
Like
figure.
that's what I think. I'm actually curious on this. For real. You said this film was like very westernized. Bride and Prejudice. I don't know if you know much about that film at all. Like, or like
Yeah, I
you
mean,
must.
I would class that as a British film more than like a Bollywood film because
Hmm.
it was done by Gurinder Chadha, who's more of a British filmmaker. So that film I would more class as a British film trying to go down like an Indian film route, but
Interesting.
actually more the British film route is where I'd class
Would
that
explain
film.
why that had like a big push in the cinemas way back when. Because I actually saw that in the
Absolutely.
cinema.
Yeah.
Like I remember the posters and shit for that. So
Yeah, I remember it as well because I remember my mum was actually really hyped to see it out of all things as well. She was like, "Oh, I really want to see this film." I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah." I think we ended up like renting it on DVD or something like that in the
I mean
end. But
that's why I went to watch the film.
y- yeah,
Like
um, curious, Pril, with that kind of film, with like a Indian film directed by British Indian directors and stuff like that, like, does that get much of a push actually in India? Like, with those kind of films, do they actually like make it that big over there? Would you say?
I remember back in the day that Bride and Prejudice did quite well, but they actually dubbed it in Hindi as well, and I think they had
Yeah.
um, so that was what more catered to the people in India, I would say. Another example is something like Slumdog Millionaire, which technically was a Hollywood, British film, but actually set more in India, having kind of some Bollywood actors as the cast as
Mhm.
well. But back to Bride and Prejudice, I do remember they did dub it in India, and they called it like a different title as well. Um,
makes sense.
because for me, I class that as like a Bollywood film made by a British filmmaker. Even though the language wasn't in
Mhm.
Hindi, it was still pretty much had some Bollywood actors in it as well, which made it familiar. And the whole
Mhm.
design and everything was more like a Bollywood film. So good film back in the day. Good film.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the dubbing as well, because I wanted to actually talk to you guys about how you watch this film as well. Because my immediate reaction when I go on Netflix is I see a film from like if it's not a British film or not American, I'd want to watch it in the original language that it's
Yeah.
in. And I immediately went on there. I saw, oh, it's gonna give me the audio in English. I want to watch this in Hindi because that's what it's suggesting to me. This is from what
Yeah.
I know of. And immediately, as I went on it, I was like, something's up with this. Like, there's not like it feels like
Yeah.
they're talking Hindi, but it also seems very dubbed over. And I was like, why is this like this? And then I end up going back to English because it felt like, wait, am I getting the wrong one here? Am I supposed to be watching this in English or Hindi? Because it was one of those things I was actually flicking between the two because I didn't know which one it was to watch the dub in.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that because I was doing the same thing. Like it was an English, then I went to English with subtitles, then I went to Hindi, and I was like flicking around because I was like, I can't quite figure out on Netflix what one is supposed to be the right one because like obviously, like Pepper was saying, because it's an Indian film, and in all of my research, it even like has in brackets a lot of the time like RRR Hindi. So I'm like, okay, I should go and watch the Hindi, but it feels like it's something's off about it. But then you can't watch in the English because then there's parts where I'm like, well, they're clearly not supposed to be speaking English. Like when the Indian governor or whatever in charge of that region is talking to the English governor, and there's another guy there who's translating, but everybody's speaking English. I was like, right, that's not right for sure. That's not supposed to happen. Because why? There are two Indian guys there talking, and then this English guy is talking, but they can all. I was like, I've watched enough like anime and stuff like from overseas dubbed to know when something feels wrong like that. But there was also just something sometimes when they were speaking and I was like I left it on Hindi for majority of the film. I'd say 3/4 of the film. But there were some times where they were speaking and I'm like watching on screen, I'm like, maybe because I don't speak the language, but I was like, it felt like the the lip movements and some of the speech were off just slightly.
So I watched it in Hindi as well, but actually the language is Telugu, which is a South Indian language. So that's the language that they speak when they're talking in the film. However, when it's Hindi, it's not. It's not the actual the way it's been
That
shot in
explains so
Hindi.
much.
Basically, if I'm correct, the
It
songs
makes so much sense.
have been they recorded the songs in Telugu, all the different languages, which is why the Natu Natu song there it was done in different languages as well. But I know the actual audio I think was meant to be Telugu, but we also watched it in Hindi just because I was lazy and I was like, I can actually understand Hindi rather than you know. And sometimes English
Right.
dub is a bit weird. So like
Yeah.
Was that an option? Because this is one thing as well. I wouldn't have clicked it because I obviously don't. I didn't
Yeah.
realize.
As two guys who grew up in England in the UK, of course, this is the first time for me at least that I've ever heard of Telugu.
Same here. Yeah.
it's a good question. I don't know because it says RRR Hindi. It doesn't really say the Telugu language. So
I was
don't
gonna say,
know.
like, going through the language options on Netflix, I'm pretty sure I didn't see it. And that just
No.
honestly, it might be because it's I mean, something like Netflix is trying to cater to the widest audience, so
Yeah.
you're only gonna have the most quote unquote common languages that would be needed for the watching the film in certain regions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing when you look at the audio options now. Because I went back just now to have a look. It's got English, Turkish, Portuguese / Brazil, Hindi, and Spanish. And I'm kind of like, from that, I'm like, why wouldn't you include the Telugu audio on that? I know obviously it's RR brackets Hindi. So obviously it's gonna have that option. I'm like quite surprised they just didn't have the original one though, you know what I mean? Like
It's crazy. Like just looking at it a little bit, it's like no one actually has the original Telugu version, which is really interesting. I don't know why they didn't make that available on Netflix. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe they just didn't think that people would care that much. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes if it's a specific dialect, then they're gonna, you go for whatever's the most marketable, right? So like Hindi, obviously, because more people understand Hindi than Telugu.
Yeah. Could be that they
Okay.
just went for the majority rather than
Yeah, well, because you said it was like more Western and like trying to aim for like as many people as possible, and that's the only reason I could think that the original like audio Telugu is like so hard to find is because it probably was to get the original audio. You probably would have to be from the region that speaks Telugu. That's probably the only place really, and maybe some like select cinemas in like India. You know what I mean? Like it, the original audio probably is never gonna come our way, even if
Yeah.
we were inclined to watch it, regardless of if we understood it or not. Like they probably just didn't think it was worth spending the money for it.
I kind of want to put it down to the time frame of it as well, because bear in mind this is 2022,
Yeah,
and Netflix. Like this is like okay, I'm going to use Squid Game as an example here, right? Because when Squid Game kicked off in the UK, it was one of the first. I mean, even in Netflix entire history, it's like one of the biggest like Korean shows ever. Like I'm just gonna put a blanket statement on that. It is probably the biggest Korean show ever. And for it to make it that big on Netflix is like unheard of, like in any streaming service, I'd say. And like that was the first example of that kind of film getting to that point. And what I want to compare RRR to is the fact that like in 2022, that like Squid Game is a case study right there. where they don't know if RRR is actually going to make it big at all as well. So like, I guess they kind of suppress that kind of thing. Maybe it's like not suppressed, but like they didn't put that option out there because they don't know how well it's actually going to do with it. Obviously, it's targeted at those Western audiences, but like you don't know how big it's going to kick off with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's done reasonably well. I'm not going to say it's Squid Game levels of appeal. You're not going to find your barber go and talk about, oh, did you see RR? That's amazing. You'll find
Well,
that
I
about
mean,
Squid
like
Game, but you won't find it about this film.
to use Squid Game as an example, you already between the three of us, we already know RRR wasn't that big because I heard a Squid Game
Yeah.
through just existing, and
Mm.
RRR I hadn't heard until Pepe brought up the film for this episode, and that was supposedly pushed to people on Netflix. And I've been on Netflix a bunch of times since it came out, and I've literally never once
Mm.
heard of this film. So
Yeah. It's one of those ones where I feel like they probably pushed it big back in 2022. Obviously, they're not going to push it big now. It's 3 years later. Why
I
would
mean,
they?
yeah, obviously, but I mean, even in general,
yeah. Mhm.
in the time frame, like I'd never once heard of it.
No, you're right. No, it's out of curiosity, Pearl. I don't know if you do have more insight into it at all, but like, obviously, massive release on Netflix at the time here. Like in around India, was this actually premiered as a Netflix thing? Do you know, or was it
No,
actually in
it was
cinemas as
premiered
well?
as a theatrical release, and
Yeah.
it was more pushed for the Academy Awards. They did go to LA. They were at the Oscars. They as I said, they were trying to go for Best Picture, Best Story, Best Acting, everything. But actually, the only award that they ended up winning at the Academy Awards was for the best sort of song, original song, which is for
Oh,
Natu
okay.
Natu. So Kareem and his team won the best song
I
for
mean, that
that.
makes sense. That was a good song.
But they did win Golden Globes. They've won a lot of. If you were to look at the list of awards this film has won, it's won not just Indian awards, like global awards. I'd say this film has done really well on the awards side. But no, it wasn't made as like a Netflix original. It was more as pushed as a massive theatrical experience release, and then later on, Netflix came on board.
Interesting. Yeah. So like, it must have been out in the cinemas over there a lot earlier than 2022, right? It must have been like, or was it released simultaneously? Could it have been like
Through my research, all I could ever find was like the UK like Netflix release.
So the cinema
Which
date in the UK was March 2022.
Yeah, so it would have been the same thing then. Okay, interesting. So wait, so it launched theatrically on March 2022, but also released on Netflix simultaneously.
Yeah, that doesn't
That's
make
like,
sense. That doesn't make sense, I'd say.
like, because I mean, bear in mind, I can understand that some people would just go to the cinema because they want that cinema experience.
Mm.
However, like, and not everyone has a Netflix account either. That's another thing as well. I guess because
I mean, it makes it could very well be that it was theatrical and Netflix at the same time. Just again to cast that widest net. Just
yeah,
get as many eyes on it as you can, because again, like we said, 2022. That's tail end of COVID.
mhm.
That's getting close to when we were like allowed to start doing,
Yeah.
doing stuff
It
like
was like proper
normal
easing
again.
up at that point, weren't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it
like
was.
it probably would. It kind of does make sense now that if you think about what was going on in the world at the time frame, to do a theatrical release and a Netflix release, because who knows how many people were actually going to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm actually going to go out into the dangerous world and head to the cinema and watch the film,
It's true.
versus like I'm just gonna put it up Netflix, give that a watch.
I guess it is a point as well where like streaming platforms, like it kind of is. I mean, it's overtaken now. Like your Disney Plus showing like
Yeah.
those films 3 months after theatrical release and stuff like that. I guess it just makes, it's like I said, it makes sense to just give them people those options. I guess. Streaming platforms as well, Pro. This is an interesting one. Like for like, is there like a certain platform that a lot of these Indian films go to, for example? Like, because obviously Disney Plus, I'm just gonna use that as an example. You got your Marvel films, your Disney films, all those come out immediately, like 3 months after, and stuff like that. But like, would it be absurd to say like, oh, Netflix gets a lot of Indian films compared to say Disney Plus or even Amazon at this point? Because I'm gonna use like anime, just general animes as a case study
Yes.
as well, because back in the day, Netflix had about 6 or 7 animes, and you'd be like, oh, cool, there's an anime on Netflix, cool. Um, but then slowly and surely they added more and more, and then now it's got like hundreds. And even Disney Plus is kind of expanding into that a bit as well. And now you're seeing some on Amazon. Like so, slowly but surely, more of these streaming platforms are getting anime. My question is like, would you say that that is also like a thing? Is there like, as a if you were like an Indian film lover, like, is there a certain platform where you're like that one has the most of them? I always use this platform to watch it because it is just like all of those Indian films are there.
I would say it's split up, but I know the main ones, so Netflix, Amazon Prime, have a lot of Indian film content. They have invested a lot in India, so they actually have their own releases. They have their own TV shows and films, which some of them are really really good. But also you've got sort of Z have a lot of streaming sort of content as well. You've got sort of Hotstar, Disney Hotstar out there, which is really popular, and a company called Geo as well, Geo Cinema. They also release quite a few films, but I still think it is between Netflix and Amazon Prime, which are releasing some of the biggies. So a lot of the films, like Salman Khan films, have all gone to Netflix in the last couple of months. So I'm guessing that there's some sort of deal that's gone on there, and maybe his new releases will be on Netflix from now on. So
Yeah, with those kind of films, do they go straight to Netflix or is like a cinema thing? That's another interesting thing because obviously there's some people that have the viewpoint in the UK that cinema's dying out because you could just why would you go to the cinema when you could just stay in your own home, watch these films and just be like that. So like in like is that like a similar kind of concept in India right now where people are like just saying like why bother with the cinema? I can just get the streaming service or whatever or use whatever just to watch these films. Is that a thing or like you said, with Salman Khan films coming straight to Netflix, for example, bear in mind, I don't know if they gone the cinema in India earlier. Is that like a thing? Like, is cinema dying out in India as well? Is that a concept?
yeah, so I'll clarify that. So basically, so the example of the Salman Khan film is that's his back catalogue films. So like films from like 10, 20 years
Okay,
ago,
yeah.
that's come onto Netflix. So all of his films would still have a theatrical release first, and maybe after 3 months come on
Hmm.
Netflix from there. I would say still a lot of the big studios and the big filmmakers are still pushing for cinema releases. Cinemas, globally is such a big medium of entertainment that I think everyone's still pushing for cinemas. But it
Hmm.
is now windows with, like a Bollywood film that released in January, mid-January. For example, a film called Skyforce, really good film, did quite well in cinemas. However, it's now appeared on Amazon Prime from this week. So probably 2.5 months, it will appear on a streaming provider. Yes, there are original content in certain films that don't release in cinemas and they go straight to, let's say, Amazon Prime or Netflix. But I do feel like this is again a global, not an issue, but a trend where I think there's
Hmm.
certain films that are now better less releasing in cinemas and just going straight on a streaming provider. And there's, a lot more like the larger than life, bigger films that you want to go to cinemas for, an action film or something. So I think it's definitely changed the game, all the streaming providers in the last few years for Bollywood, Hollywood, all the regions, I'd say.
Yeah.
In terms of what does get released in cinemas and what doesn't really. So
It's such an interesting thing because
yeah.
obviously like it's such an interesting landscape in general, like
Mhm.
especially like for the TV industry, for example. Like people are saying that oh, live TV is dead because why would you tune into that kind of thing? Like when you could just go straight to a streaming platform, watch that kind of stuff. And like this is just like you said, it isn't just Indian films here, or it isn't just if it's globally that is a situation which a lot of people are facing. Like well, like is this the death of this certain media? Is the cinema and is watching stuff live on TV just dead? Is it pointless? Is it can you just go straight to online with that? Like, and I guess another question to you, Pearl, is like, is there any like massive films that come out which go straight to streaming service that you can pick out? Like, is that a thing that's like Is there any case studies of that?
I think that's a very good question. Not off the top of
Uh,
my
uh,
head.
uh,
I mean,
yeah.
I've known of big films that didn't work. Let's say Bollywood films that didn't work in the cinemas, and then
Mhm.
they, like an example of this is a Bollywood film called Lal Singh Chaddha, which I thought was a brilliant film. It's an Indian adaptation of Forrest Gump. Came out a few years ago, and
Interesting.
they Amir Khan's the main actor, who's a global actor as well. So they released the film in cinemas, and at the time they wanted it to be exclusive in cinemas for like 3 to 6, maybe 6 months. However, when the film
Okay.
didn't perform as well, suddenly within 3 to 4 weeks, you saw that on Netflix. They must have just tried to do a deal, just to try get that in, and then that was sort of pitched as like a Netflix sort of film. But actually, you knew it did come out in cinemas. But again, I thought it was a really, really good film, but probably just didn't appeal to the Indian audiences. So there's probably examples of that.
Interesting. Yeah.
I will try to think of any ideas if there was any big sort of Netflix
I-
films, but
I apologize for putting you on the spot there as well, but I'm asking a lot of these questions. Like, oh yeah, is this thing? Is this thing? Like, I know obviously you're very much into Indian films. I don't expect you to be
Well, I
knowledge
mean,
of
like
every
he's
single.
the film guy. Like
Yeah.
context of our friend group, like Pro's the film guy. Like you want to know about almost. I don't want to say almost any film, but like generally, Pro probably knows. Like
no pressure.
Yeah, this isn't just not even just like what is it? Even the Indian films, like quite a lot, just generally a lot of films. Yeah.
in context is just the episode and the subject matter is like we pin Pro as like the Indian film guy, but like he's just the film guy.
I'm passionate about films, guys. That's it.
I
So,
see. No, but like, is there anything for you, Pril, that stood out in this movie in particular? I know, like we said, it's appealing to Western audiences, all this kind of thing. Is there like one thing you take away from RRR, which like they did that really, really well? Is there something you can pick out from that?
I'd say there's a few things. I think in terms of, I think the scale and larger than life. I would say the storyline actually having, it wasn't. We have a term like a bakwas film, like just no story, action. Do you get what I mean? It wasn't that. It actually
Yeah.
had a story, it had a purpose, had heart to it, which I think is really important. And the writer of the film is actually the director's father. And the writer
Oh,
is
okay.
one of the best writers in Indian cinema. And as soon as I saw he had written the film, I was like, I had a bit more better expectations because his work is fantastic.
I agree with you. The story is actually really compelling once you get into it. There's, like you said, some absurd bits in it. I think I'm just going to name this because it is one that sticks out in my head right now. It's when, was it Beam first gets Rub out of the prison, like the underground prison
Oh
bit.
yeah.
But Rub's not really too steady on his legs right now because obviously been beaten to shit. And then it's just the scene of them running through the forest, but he's giving him he's on his shoulders. So Beam's running through it, and then like Rub's there, like just fucking punching people. Like.
It's part of that whole sequence. But do you remember that one part where they swing up and round from underneath a guard tower, but Ram is still
Yeah.
sat on Beam's shoulders? And they fucking
Swinging each other.
yeah, they swing
Yeah,
and
it is,
they
yeah,
flip
it's-
and take out one of the guards in this watchtower while still like together. Like he's still sat on his shoulder. And you're like, what the fuck? And then there's like
Yeah.
the one shot of him sat on his shoulders just before they run straight through the forest. It's like the poster because it's Ram sat on his shoulders with the two rifles.
Oh yeah, it's the rifles thing, and then like, oh yeah, it needs to reload. And Beam's the one that kind of like, like cocks the guns or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's such a bizarre scene, but it's also like, what on earth am I watching here? It's fantastic. It's fantastically mad, but I did love that kind of scene.
Mate, the
That was
first
great.
madness was like on that bridge scene early on in the
Yeah.
film
Oh,
where
yeah.
the kid is like in the little like boat and it's on fire and they go to save him. It's the first time they like meet and they like cooperate, but then like Ram rides up on a horse, Beam comes up on a motorbike, and then just look at each other like there's this fucking rope, and he's like, I get it. And then they like swing in, and then they meet together and do like the the old Predator like arm grab shake, and they're both there just like swinging at the bottom of this bridge, holding each other, like doing like a Superman flying pose almost, and they're both just like, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about this one moment after that though, because it was so funny. It was it's like a 10-minute montage of them getting to know each other and stuff like that. But what is the funniest thing about that is it's so like homoerotic is the way that I'm going to describe it, because I know like they're becoming best friends, right? But then there's just these moments. They're riding together into a sunset and stuff like this, and then there's like all these moments where they're hanging out by a tree and running through fields together, and I'm like, this feels more romantic than anything here.
It's their bromance. Leave them alone.
That's the correct language, though. I didn't know how to define it because when watching it, we also thought it's the same, but I think homoerotic might be the best way to describe it.
I mean, yeah, it was. It's two guys, they were getting to know each other, and
I think it kind of it lends to the fact that they're both really hench as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It lends to it even more. They're just two hench dudes just hanging out in fields together.
Well, I mean, like they also foreshadowed the whole like we're gonna stack up, because there's one part in the montage where they're just like Beam is just like doing squats whilst Ram's sat on his shoulders.
Yeah.
In the middle of a random like open field on a mountain, because it's like a wide like panning drone shot of just these two guys like stacked up and doing squats on a mountain. You're like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, cool.
It's so funny. I remember just watching this like, wait, hold on, what? The film's just started, and obviously it shows that they're getting to know each other a bit more and they're becoming best friends, because how else do you show that kind of relationship between these two characters which have just met but then like slowly becoming like better and better friends? Obviously he's going around like family's house or whatever, just like eating food or whatever, like chilling with family. That's that big social occasionally kind of thing. It's nice to see, but geez, it feels very
I have a fun fact for both of you, right? Did you know?
Okay,
RRR is a fictional story, but it's based off the lives of two real freedom fighters. So the two characters. So that's that. When I heard that was a crazy fact. But I thought it's worth mentioning that actually, yes, it's a fictional story, but the two main characters are based off two real life freedom fighters.
I only knew that because when I was getting the notes, the two main characters like names are hyperlinked on Wiki, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I hovered over, and then it was pictures of statues, and I was like, oh, these are the names of real people. And that was one thing I was gonna ask, but then I figured, I mean, it's movies, so I was like, how much of this is real? And I was like, it's probably just the guys, just the character names. Honestly, I was like, there's no way any of this is real. There's no way a man jumped over a fence and took on 400 people.
What are you talking about?
There's no way.
The tiger roaring at a tiger,
There's no way Beam actually like broke into the camp, right, and was just crawling around on the floor like army style, and no one saw him
knocking the ground, knocking the ground,
where they're both like knocking. There is no freaking way.
What do you mean? It sounds so realistic.
No, but the thing that was real is the stacking up and kicking the guy out of that guard tower. That's real. No one.
That's
one
real.
can
Yeah,
convince me
talent.
otherwise.
Like that is just talent. Pure talent.
Yeah, I don't even think there was any stunt coordinators. I'm pretty sure those guys just did that.
No,
and,
man,
like,
that was
no
one
one.
take.
Yeah.
No,
it wasn't in the script.
That was a one take. Yeah.
Yeah, they just did that. The guy in the tower was like, "What the fuck, bro?"
That was just them
I wasn't
warming up,
expecting this. They literally kicked a guy out of the tower.
They're like, right, boys, we're setting up for the next scene. please get ready, and they were just fucking around. They're like, oh god, that looked cool. Turn the camera on, film it.
Keep it.
Fun fact: the two actors just went around, but like just beating up 400 dudes. It's actually a documentary at that point. It wasn't even part
Yeah,
of the film.
they stack up all the
those
time, and they just go around like beating the shit out.
that was just the art department. They just fucked up the art department.
For legal reasons, this is a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine getting sued.
Mate,
you
can never be sure on the internet. You got to cover all your bases. For legal reasons, that was all a joke. We have no idea. We have no affiliation. We're just three guys fucking recording. Okay.
Sorry, Rajamouli sir.
It's like
Pepe.
kind of like going. Yeah, of course, it's blame me. I did kind of start. But like obviously goes into that like the last song before the credits roll and stuff like that as well. It feels like it pays homage to a lot of like historical figures in India as well. I didn't know who they were, but like probably
Correct.
culturally ignorant. Yeah, but there's like a lot of. It feels like they're paying a lot of homage to those people like in that song.
Yes.
Like a lot of like portraits in the background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know who they are, so apologies.
No,
but yeah.
there were like certain like either freedom fighters or certain political figures, which they paid homage to. But one other factor that I forgot to mention earlier is that they also, so as well as casting Ajay Devgan, who's a big Bollywood star, the actress who played Sita, so the wife, she's Alia Bhatt, who's a big Bollywood actress as well. So again, in terms of making the film and trying to appeal to everyone, it's kind of like they did Ram Charan, who's a huge South Indian actor who played the main actor. Then you've got Junior NTR, who played Beam, again a massive South Indian actor. Then they've tried to merge, getting big Bollywood actors as well. So again, it's just kind of a fusion of a film. But yes, in that last song, I did recognize a few sort of famous figures in Indian history, I would say. So
Yeah, would that go for South Indian as well as like just India as a whole, or is it kind of like? I'm not sure what the whole concept of like again. Apologies for the ignorance that are coming across here, but like with all those figures that came up, are they more South Indian or is it just India as a whole with those like kind of freedom fighters and stuff?
I would say it
Came
was
up in
India
that
as a
film?
whole. India as a whole.
Yeah.
I would say
Okay. Yeah.
that they just referenced. I think the idea behind it was a collage of freedom fighters, basically, who fought for India. So whether you've got, I think it's Subhash Chandra Bose, you've got Bhagat Singh, you've also got. I don't want to name anyone else in case I get the names wrong, but there was a good few amount of freedom
Yeah.
fighters who, not just for South India, it's actually just fought for India in general, basically, and that was what the homage was for.
Makes sense.
That's cool. I think it's a cool little thing at the end as well, because obviously, like you said, these two characters are based off those freedom fighters, and it is like, oh look, here's like encapsulated. Let's pay more homage to let's go roll with the theming of this, and it feels like quite a cool little thing to see at the end. Again, I didn't understand it, but you know, obviously this is a reference to something. Like even if you're completely ignorant to the fact of these historical figures, you'd be like, oh okay, this is a big deal. It feels like a big deal what they're doing here.
Well, I mean, it also does play into the story of like fighting the English oppression, which
Yeah.
you know with the character we mentioned before, the Admiral Scott or whatever, like the depiction of British rule back then being that cruel. In the one statement you hear from him, what is the value of this bullet? It was made in a British factory, shipped on a British vessel. It cost the crown £1 sterling. And like this, it was like that whole theme of like fighting for India, like all these statements, like, and that last song really does make a lot of sense now. Knowing that the two characters are also actual like freedom fighters.
Yeah. I think like that whole sentiment throughout that whole like the whole movie, that is something that sticks with you, that first line from the British officers and stuff. And I'm gonna say that like I don't know if you realize it, like recognize the was it? Is it Admiral Scott? I can't remember like who it was. I just know him as Scott.
Satin Scott,
Yeah,
yeah.
main guy Scott. I was gonna call him main guy Scott. Yeah, like
My
he
man
was. I was
Scott.
like, where have I seen this dude before? And it turns out he was in the Thor films. Yeah.
Ray
it wasn't.
Stevenson is the actor's name. Ray
Ray-
Stevenson.
That's it. Yeah, that was it. And I was like, where have I seen this guy before? And then turns out he's in the Thor films, like 1 and 2, I think. I don't think he's in 3. He might get killed from there on, or he might not be relevant. But again, it's been a while since I've seen those films. But
Who is he in Thor?
it's even a name that I can't even pronounce. It's so absurd.
Because I don't recognize that guy at all.
His character name is called Volstagg.
Yeah.
From Thor
Volstagg.
Ragnarok. I don't remember what the character was.
Oh, he was
but
in
yeah,
Ragnarok as well. Okay,
he was in
fair.
Ragnarok.
Um,
And
No.
yeah, all the Thor
Right,
films
okay.
actually. Yeah.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's not, the Thor films aren't even like on my radar.
I mean,
as
anyway.
great films. I'm not gonna lie. But my point is that he actually played like the villain quite well in that. Like it was like, don't be wrong, it's like bordering levels of like camp, like movie theater villain, but it's like still quite a good villain character. I'd say he did it quite well.
You say camp, but I could believe in the time period that
Yeah.
the upper class Brit would be exactly like that, though.
Oh, 100%.
You know,
yeah,
stiff
like-
upper lip. Yes, don't talk to the natives, the savages. How dare you go against the crown? The crown is all powerful, and the UK will come and take everything and put it in the museum.
Nathan, you do that too well.
Yeah.
Is there something you're not telling us about your past lifetime or something? Like,
Yeah, I was Scott. That's me, Scott. That's me. That is.
Scott turned Chinese apparently in reincarnation.
Oh, what a ironic life to be reborn into. So patriotic. No, he's come back as a Chinese man.
Right. I'm cautious of time wise sort of thing, so I think you may have tried to. Is there any final thoughts you want to take away from like as a whole from this, guys? Any final thoughts you want to say about this film?
I easily would recommend this. It's the only thing I will say is the same warning Priyal gave me is it's long. Okay, I did say in the breakdown it is 3 hours and 5 minutes, and Priyal did message me and tell me to break it up because it would make it easier to watch. I did not heed his warning, and I watched it all in one go. And I did at some point think, oh, this is coming to an end, and then I was only an hour and a half in. So be prepared if you are going to do it in one sitting. I will say that.
And it's very true. Priyal, any final words as our resident Bollywood / Indian film expert? Anything you want to say about RR before we wrap up this episode?
Highly recommended film. What I will say is for those that have seen RRR and wanted to get introduced to other Bollywood or Indian cinema, I could give, if that's okay, a couple of recommendations.
Please do.
So from Bollywood, I mean the writer of the film, Vijendra Prasad, he had written a Bollywood film. I think it came out in 2015 called Bajrangi Bhaijaan. Still, I think 10 years on, it's for me one of the best films of Indian cinema. It's got Salman Khan in it, but not doing typical Salman Khan stuff. Like it has a really, really good story. So I'd highly recommend that title. Also, I would recommend on Netflix, there is a film called Maharaj, which has got the actor Vijay in it. It's a South Indian film, but the less you know about it, the better. But it was called Maharaja. Sorry, Maharaja. The less you know about it, the better. 2 hours 20-minute thriller. From start to finish, one of the best films I've seen in years. And that, from Hollywood, Bollywood, it's South Indian, so not even Bollywood. But there'd be my 2 recommendations to get you guys started who don't watch Indian cinema, basically. But yeah, RRR, highly recommended if you haven't seen it as well.
That's great. Thank you as well for the recommendations, bro. I think that's actually one thing that, like, where do you go from here? And that's fantastic. Thank you, mate. And then finally for me, I guess like I'd say 100% watch it. Just even like regardless of like whether you've seen it in Indian cinema before, I think it is a great watch. Like don't me wrong, it's like Nathan said, it is long. I started watching it at like 9 o'clock, and then I paused for a little bit and didn't actually finish it till like 20 to 2 in the morning, which is fun. But no, 100%. I'd recommend it. It's a good watch. Like it's entertaining as hell, and that's what you kind of want from a film. At the end of the day, you want to be entertained. You want to see that kind of thing, and it's a great way to get like actually, like you said, for Western audiences. I think it's a great way to get started into Indian films and kind of branch off from that. So yeah, I think on behalf of the three of us, I say we'd recommend it. But on that note, guys, thank you for listening. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you again, Priyal, for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for the invitation. I've had an amazing time. Thank you. I'm a fanboy, and thanks for inviting the fan to join you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
keep up the good work,
honestly,
guys.
Been great having you, Priyal. Thank you. And on that note, we will see you guys next time for another Cultured Boys episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.